Hello everyone, and this is a video that's actually going to be a little bit different from the norm. Matter of fact, I said this in my weekend preview. I was going to try something a little bit different this week in the terms of a video content or something in that sense. Something that I did not know if I would ever do myself one day, but I actually prefer to watch these every now and again, which is a top 10 list. And honestly, for the most part, in these top 10 lists that I'm going to end out doing, I'm going to more than likely do voiceover work and then put video and everything in this sense. But for the aspect of this first one and for what it actually is, I can't really do video for you guys because it's going to revolve around the WWE. As you know, I have a podcast called, I'm starting up a podcast called God Saw's Turnbuckle. It's here on my YouTube page, and I go through Raw, NXT, SmackDown, and Impact Wrestling, and I go off and review them, and of course pay-per-views to go along with it. But for this one, this is going to be a top 10 list of WWE's worst pay-per-view names. Now, that's the aspect behind this, is the pay-per-view names themselves, not the actual quality of the pay-per-views. Matter of fact, this basically came about with the most recent pay-per-view name that has come up through WWE, which was the Great Balls of Fire pay-per-view name. And I figured I would go ahead and do a list of what I feel are the top 10 worst pay-per-view names. Now, like I said, this doesn't mean anything in the terms of the match quality on the show. Matter of fact, there's a chance that this may never have aired. That's a little bit of a spoiler for you guys. But like I said, doesn't matter match quality, doesn't matter in any sense of the word of the actual quality of the pay-per-view. It's just, these are the worst names in my own personal opinion. So let's get right into it with the first one at number 10 being the Great Balls of Fire pay-per-view, which is going to air on July 9th, 2017. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, I laugh about this name more than anything. And matter of fact, that's the only reason why it's at number 10. This one honestly should probably be higher on that list in the terms of worst names, but with the aspect of just the hilarity of the name, the fact that they got the Jerry Lee Lewis song to go along with it, and it seems like they're kind of in on the joke now that this is a bad pay-per-view name, that, you know what, I'm not gonna lie to you, it only gets that number 10 spot based off of the hilarity of it on that sense of it. The coming in at the number 9 spot, we'll get out of the hilarity side, and this one aired on December 12th, not 2000, but 1998. This was actually right after Survivor Series, and it was called Rock Bottom. And WWE kind of went through a phase, and you'll see this a little bit in here, of starting to name their pay-per-views or their old in-your-houses after either their some of their factions, or in this case, The Rock's finishing move to go along with it. And like I said, this pay-per-view happened right after the Survivor Series, the Deadly Games Survivor Series in 1998, where Rock had turned to the corporate, had turned heel and went to corporate, and they had this pay-per-view name to go along with it. I believe the main event of that one was Rock versus Mankind. You also had a Buried Alive match with Undertaker and Stone Cold Steve Austin. You had some good matches on there, but like I said, this is more to the aspect of the actual name itself. And again, it was just them. It's like, we need a name for a pay-per-view. There's The Rock. Why don't we call it Rock Bottom? Okay. And they went with it. So, coming in at number 8 is actually something that's very similar to this one, was called Breakdown. This aired on September 26, 1998. And this one, you see it in the promotional picture as well. I believe I'm going to have a promotional picture like right up over here that they had for the actual show, which was basically just DX. And again, they were just going off on this whole aspect of naming things after people that were already in the company and everything in that sense at that time. And again, it just falls under that aspect. That's probably why it comes in at number 8, since I put Rock Bottom at number 9. This one, you can't put this one much higher on that portion of the list. You gotta go, it had to kind of come in here at number 8. So, with that being said, we'll go right into number 7 now. And honestly, this name is being used today in Impact Wrestling, but WWE used it a long time ago, and it was called One Night Only. As a matter of fact, I believe it was one of their first UK pay-per-views that they had done, and they deemed it to be called One Night Only. It just like, what's the purpose of the name? It's like, it's one night only for what? To go along with everything. Is this the only time we're ever going to see this match, or is this the only time we're ever going to get this pay-per-view? Which is the funny thing, because they were probably thinking it's like, oh, well, only because it was a UK exclusive pay-per-view through Sky, and they're probably expecting that this would be the only time that they actually do something like this, though they basically made it 2 times a year, not too much longer after this, for a few years, where you had Rebellion and Insurrection over in the UK, and those were only being you could only see those in the UK, and then they would release them on DVD later, and of course now you can just see it on the WWE network. But with the aspect of the name itself, it's like it made no real sense. It's like, it doesn't really have a theme. It doesn't really have a theme or anything in that sense. It really felt like there was like, oh, this is going to be a one night only thing. We're never going to do another UK pay per view again or anything in that sense. Well, lo and behold, they did it for a few more years afterwards to go along with it. So it kind of it just kind of negates what they called it. And now Impact Wrestling uses the name One Night Only or their monthly pay-per-views. Yes, they do actually have monthly pay-per-views, by the way, on Impact Wrestling to go along with it, and that's pretty much going to be the only time I really. It's not going to be the only time that I really mention Impact Wrestling, but they are currently using that name to go along with it, and it just doesn't really serve a purpose to go along with everything. Coming in at number 6, though, is Roadblock, End of the Line. This one aired on December 18th, just last year in 2016. And this one actually had some good matches, though probably a rather poor main event. It did have the Sasha Banks Charlotte Iron Man match, or Iron Woman match, on this show to go along with it. And you did, like I said, it had good matches, but it's like, again, you got a pay-per-view name, and it's called Roadblock, End of the Line. What's the roadblock for? Like, is it a roadblock between... Is it supposed to represent a roadblock between Survivor Series and the Royal Rumble? Like, what's the actual purpose of what they're going for here? And it's not like it was the only other pay-per-view before those ones, because you had Tables, Ladders, and Chairs that happened just a few weeks later. To go along with it, or a few weeks earlier, so it wasn't like it was the only pay-per-view in between that time too. So it was like, what was the actual purpose of this one? They did have a network special earlier in the year that was also called Roadblock, and that one kind of was deemed a little bit easier because it was kind of a roadblock for certain people going into WrestleMania. But like here, it just doesn't seem to serve any kind of purpose. They were just like, we need a name. Let's call it Roadblock. It's kind of like we'll go with Fastlane or something like that, which doesn't actually make this list, though it could technically be an honorable mention to that one, with the aspect of Fastlane, like, just doesn't really serve a purpose or anything in that sense. So going into number 5 now, and in this one, you kind of I kind of get it, but I kind of don't. In this sense, and that is St. Valentines Day Massacre, which actually did happen on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1999. And again, you had some really good matches on this show. You had the debuting of The Big Show in the main event. You had The Rock and Mankind in a Last Man Standing match. You had the whole aspect of Hardcore Holly and Al Snow at the beginning of the show having a hardcore title match that actually went into the Mississippi River to go along with it. So you had some good stuff there, but it's like, really, you're basically going to take a movie title, which I believe that is actually a horror movie title, St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and you're just going to plop it in as one of your pay-per-view names. It did not really resonate. And a matter of fact, if you actually recognize this, with the exception of one of these, and we don't know about Great Balls of Fire or Roadblock even as well at this point, but most of these have only been used one time by WWE in any way, shape, or form, and including this actual pay-per-view name called St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Which, like I said, it is like, okay, that's pretty much a horror movie title, and I think it's an actual horror movie, and you're just using it as a pay-per-view name. Okay, we'll go with that. We'll go with that. So, coming in, as I take a drink real quick. So, coming in at number 4 is a show that aired on August 27th, 1986. And it was just called The Big Event. Now, notice the time frame there, August. This is actually a pay-per-view that was done before their SummerSlam pay-per-view. Before they deemed the name SummerSlam going into other particular August shows for that one. This is them going into another pay-per-view after WrestleMania, where they had only, like I said, they only did WrestleManias for the first few years before they actually had things like Survivor Series and SummerSlam and everything in this sense. This was them branching out, and they decided to just name it The Big Event. Okay, I mean, WrestleMania has the an extra title being called like the granddaddy of them all, or the spectacle of spectacles and everything in that sense. But you're just gonna name it a pay-per-view. That just like, what do we need? It's like, we need something real quick. The Big Event. Okay, that's nice and lazy. We'll go with that. So, yeah, again, it was just another pay-per-view name that just didn't resonate all that well. As a matter of fact, a lot of pay-per-view names don't necessarily resonate all that well, but these are definitely the ones that I feel are kind of the worst. And now that we've gone with number 4, we have to go into number 3. And matter of fact, this was actually done twice in the terms of everything. And this show was called Taboo Tuesday. Now, it does have another name to go along with it, because they decided to not do the Tuesday thing anymore afterwards. But Taboo Tuesday was the fan-voted variation pay-per-view, and it would air on Tuesday, like right after it would air after Raw. So you would have Raw, and then you would have Taboo Tuesday the next day, in that sense. And it was just them kind of dabbling into something that they had done once before, a very long time ago, which I won't talk about the name of that pay-per-view quite yet, with everything. Again, this might be a little bit of a spoiler. But they would air, it was their area of trying to go back to doing Tuesday pay-per-views, middle of the week pay-per-views, which it did not working. And then it eventually got moved to Cyber Sunday, which actually works more for it, because you're doing more computer-based voting and everything in that sense. I mean, you had voting by the fans based on the computer, and they just name it Taboo Tuesday. It's like, what? That doesn't resonate with what you're going for on the pay-per-view in any way. And it was, and again, like I said, they did do it for a few more years afterwards on with the Cyber Sunday side of everything, and then it eventually died off after that. And they don't really do much fan voting stuff in the terms of going with their show or anything in that sense, which I think they kind of figured out where everything was going with that, and how a lot of the fans ended out pretty much seeing it as like, oh, you're kind of leading us in this direction to vote for this person, or vote for that, or vote for this, or vote for this, instead of just it being like an actual vote in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, like I said, for the theme that they had for the pay-per-view, seems good. And then you have a name called Taboo Tuesday. See where I'm going with that one, and see where it's like this. The two things don't resonate. Fan voting, Taboo Tuesday. What? Huh? Especially with the fact that, again, it was going with computers. I guess going with computers and everything to go along with that at the beginning. So, leading into number 2. And they only did this pay-per-view once. It aired on June 19th, 2010. And it was called Fatal 4-Way. Which, guess what the theme of the show was? It was Fatal 4-Way matches. At least at least they had the theme for it. Why does it come in so high? Because it's so lazy of a name to go along with it. And I mean, it's like they probably come up with the terms of like the theme of it is like, what do we need for a theme? How about we do nothing but Fatal 4-Ways? Yeah, we could call it Fatal 4-Way. And then I guess Vince is like, do it! And then it actually ended up happening in that sense. So yeah, not really too much to say about that one in any way other than, yeah, it happened. It was there. And it comes in at number 2 because, like I said, such a lazy name for what they came up with for the theme that they came with the pay-per-view, even though at least it matched the theme of the pay-per-view to go along with it. So this brings us into number 1. I've already kind of mentioned the honorable mention beforehand with Fastlane. It's not it really doesn't serve a purpose. I guess they try to deem it as worthy because this is supposed to be the fast lane to WrestleMania or something in that sense, which I don't think it really resonates that way with fans to go along with it. But that is kind of the honorable mention name in the terms of being one of the worst pay-per-view names ever. So, coming in at number 1 was a pay-per-view that aired on December 3rd, 1991. As a matter of fact, it aired just a couple of days, actually about 8 days after Survivor Series, which had The Undertaker going up against Hulk Hogan with The Undertaker winning. And this was kind of the rematch, and they figured, why not? We're going to go ahead and do it again, and we're going to have it be on a Tuesday in Texas. And then it's like, we need a name for this. How about This Tuesday in Texas? That's right. This Tuesday in Texas happened. And this was actually, the interesting thing about this one, a little snippet on this, it's just a horrible name because, again, you need a pay-per-view name. And it's on a Tuesday and you're in Texas. So let's just call it This Tuesday in Texas or something in that sense. Again, very lazy and just overly bad in the terms of the actual names itself. But the interesting thing about this one, WWE is considering at this time to do weekly pay-per-views or more frequent pay-per-views like every other week or something in that sense. Before a little company called Total Nonstop Action actually did it to get their company off the ground, they had to do weekly pay-per-views because they didn't have a TV deal to show off their content to go along with it. WWE was actually considering it here. Obviously, it ended up failing, so yeah, they are currently doing a lot more pay-per-views with the brand split and everything now at this point in time, but they have the WWE Network. You don't have to pay like more money every other week or every week for a pay-per-view to go along with it. So with just with that being said, it's like, again, they needed something and they came up with it real quick, and this was featuring the rematch with Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker, which eventually held up the WWF title at the time and led into the 1992 Royal Rumble to go along with it. But it's like I guess they didn't necessarily plan the event initially, and it's like, hold on, we need to do a rematch real quick, and we need a name. So wham, there you go, and they just plastered a logo to go along with it, and it was off to the races for that one. Obviously, like I said, they were considering potentially doing weekly pay-per-views at one point. At least that's what it seemed like. And they decided, obviously with the aspect of this one not really working the way that they wanted to, they got away from that. And in that sense of everything. So, yeah. With that being said, everyone, that is my top 10 list. This is the first one I'm trying to do. I'm going to be trying to do other top 10 lists, but this is also going to focus around gaming. It won't necessarily focus around wrestling. If it does focus around wrestling, you'll probably see things like this, and then I'll have pictures, because I can't really show video of WWE or anything in that sense, but you can show pictures and to go along with everything. In that sense of it, or words or anything in that sense, and it doesn't really end out hurting anyone, but you can't just show video. So with that being said, guys, that is my first top 10 list that I am going with. This is the, at least in my own personal opinion, the top 10 worst WWE pay-per-view names. And I thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.